Rhonda J. Meyers is recognized statewide as a passionate and committed leader in the field of early childhood education. She holds a bachelor's degree from Hope College in Psychology and Sociology and a master's degree from Open University in Early Childhood Education. Rhonda is co-owner of Heartfelt Impressions Learning Centers and a business consultant and training specialist. For over 28 years, Rhonda has committed herself to championing quality early education. Rhonda is an active Michigan MiAEYC member, serving in leadership roles at the chapter and state level. She is currently the Personnel Committee Chair for Michigan MiAEYC. As a working mom, she considers her greatest accomplishment to be raising 5 amazing kids. Please join me in welcoming my friend and yours, Rhonda Meyers.
Standing in your truth means having a super awkward moment at about 400 people watching. Actually, it's not the most awkward moment because it was probably, I don't know, Lori, what was it? Oh, we are definitely working. I could go back and look for that. No, for real, this is really happening right now. Okay. Yeah. All right, much better. A little loud. So about, I don't know, back in May, Lori says to me, so I was at an amazing leadership training done by Michelle. She's offering another 3 sessions. If you haven't done it, she's incredible. And she says, you're going to keynote on Saturday at the conference. Yes. It's on my bucket list. I'm so excited. It's a career goal. I said, and you know what? My topic's going to be stand in your truth. I should tell you that I'm a fairly impulsive person, and sometimes my mouth works before my filter. So for like the last 3 days, I was like, like, why couldn't I pick something like, hey, how do you like get teachers to stay? That seems a little less personal. But no, I jumped in with 2 feet. So what do I mean when I say to you, what does it mean to stand in your truth? It means I need to behave congruently with the way that I see the world. Standing in your truth means being courageous, being vulnerable, and true to your authentic self, which means no masks. And in this field, that can be pretty hard. But the beautiful thing about it is that it belongs to you and only you, but most importantly, no one else defines your truth. So, now the hard part. I have to tell you my story. Life happens when you're busy making dreams come true. I've worked in the field of early childhood for 28 years. So, like I was 10. Never mind that I have a 28-year-old. In May of 2008, my 18-year marriage to my college sweetheart ended. And that was tough. With 4 kids and being a single parent, and a month of them all sleeping in your room because their whole world just turned upside down, it's pretty tough. In July of 2008, my father was diagnosed with liver failure. In April of 2009, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. This is when it got really interesting, though. In May of 2009, my baby sister moves in with me because she lives in Connecticut, and she's going to come help take care of my mom. But she also has a 1 and a 3-year-old. You're getting a vision of this, right? 1, 3, 8, 12, 8, 10, 14, 16, or 18. Anyway, there was a shit ton of kids in my house. And all my kids were past the age where they wake up in the morning and their feet are in your face. They were past, you feel my pain, right? And And the day they start sleeping in their own bed, you're like, yes! And then your sister comes to move in with you. And because you're a single parent now, you can share a bedroom and a bed. Seems like a great idea with your sister. You know, the one who her daughters tell a story about how my brother and I pushed her down the stairs in a box and broke her collarbone, which isn't the real story. Okay? The real story is we were playing horse, and she was sitting in the box on my back, and she happened to fall off my back, not down the stairs, in a box. But these are the stories little sisters tell their children. For a year, we took care of my mom. We took turns driving to U of M, doing chemo, doing treatments for the ravaging effects of chemo. But we did it together as a family. We showed up every day. We made 6 lunches. We put 6 kids to bed. There was a lot of laundry in my house that year. A lot. And in August of 2009, they gave my father 2 weeks to live. I should tell you that I'm one of the early children of divorce. So this was my biological father and my mom and my stepdad. So 2 totally separate families, right? Doesn't add any degree of difficulty at all to this story. So 10 days later, he receives a liver transplant, which is amazing. Of course, 8 days or 2 days before that, he thought he was. If you've ever experienced anyone who has a liver or any kind of transplant, you can go to the hospital and get ready and then it not happen. Those were the longest 13 hours of my life. And then the surgeon went and did another 13-hour surgery right after. I know why they have a God complex. Because who could do that? It's just incredible. But so grateful. And then 3 days later, no big deal, but my oldest son, he would tell you he's my favorite. I'm not answering whether that's true. Leaves to go to Michigan Tech. He could have gone to like Michigan State, an hour away. No, he picks a school that's still in-state tuition, but farther than Georgia. Thanks for saving me some money, but at least it's warm in Georgia. Parents' weekend? Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. Arctic tundra. But we spend the next 5 hours after we drop them off. We have a great weekend. How many of you have sent your oldest child off to college? I see my people. Did you do it like this? No one in the car says a word for 5 hours. And if you've ever driven through the UP, there is not a lot to look at. Some dreams. Now, mind you, the 3 other children in my car are not fighting with each other for 5 hours. This has never happened in my entire parenting career. Not a sound. Until my 16-year-old says to me, just before we get to the bridge, "Hey, Mom." "Yeah." "Just how long are you going to cry?" You know, we're all still here. Because he is my textbook middle child. He didn't get to be the oldest, he didn't get to be the youngest, and he didn't get to be the girl. He's been cheated. You middle children, you know what I'm talking about. You didn't get to do it first, and you don't get the benefit of being the baby who doesn't have any of the same rules that we did, right? But we survived. On April 9th, 2010, I lose my mom. One of the most significant, devastating, and life-changing moments of my life. But I'm not the only person in this room that's happened to. I'm not. And I know that. Not like when I was a teenager and my dad used to say to me, "You know, Rhonda, the universe doesn't revolve around you." Can we challenge that for a second? And then, when I would get in my boo-hoo moments of things that were happening, my dad said, "You know, sometimes you need to stop and remember that something might be happening not to you, but around you. You cannot make it yours. How it affects you is one thing, but it is not you." On April 16th, 1 week later, and 3 days after I buried my mom, my employer, so I should back up and tell you this. I did my first 5 years in early childhood, corporate early childhood. How many of you work for a corporate program? Don't be ashamed, hold your hands up high. I learned so much in those 5 years. I took every opportunity I could because they have built systems to be successful. Not everything everywhere is perfect, but I learned a lot. And then when I left there, I did a year in a school district and had an opportunity to see that. And then I wanted to go to grad school, and when your husband travels and you have 3 kids, working full-time and going to grad school, might be tough. I did home daycare, group home daycare. Where are my home daycare people? Raise your hands. Nice, thank you. Because we're losing you by droves in Michigan, and I'm worried about serving our communities. So thank you for what you're doing. It was some of the best 5 years of my life. I had the most deep, meaningful relationships with families and children. We celebrated together, we cried together. You can't do home daycare and not be personal. And relationships are my favorite thing about this work. But, as it always is, when you go to church and they find out what to do for a living, they're like, so, could you volunteer? And I have not yet mastered this word. No. It's a whole sentence. There's like a period at the end. Okay, I'm a work in progress. So I'm doing something for them as they're exploring whether or not to have a preschool. And I live in a fairly small town, and they say, hey, why don't you call the township? So I call the township. The township says, hey, we've got these people who are going to build this really large early child. There is no other early childhood program in my town at this time. They're going to build this really large early childhood program. Maybe they can answer your question. Thinking back now, I'm not really sure how that answered my question of what the township rules were, but that's what she told me. Clearly, in everything in my life, it was divine intervention. So I called them, and they're like, who are you? We get to talking. I start talking about my passion, because if you've ever met me before, you know, 1, I talk too much, and 2, I like to talk about things that I'm passionate about. So the next thing I know, they're offering me a job. And I'm like, no, I really like working for myself. I don't think I want to work for someone else. And I really love what I do, but my kids were getting older, and they less than appreciated 12 other children in their home every day. I guess that's a thing, right? It's a thing. So there are people in here whose moms did that. They're like, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing. I'm feeling some power right up front here. It's a thing. So ultimately, I take the job, sign a contract, break ground in 2002. I take over everything. Architecture, job descriptions, you name it. I'm writing it, and I'm building it, and I'm working, and the owners have nothing to do with it, so I feel like I'm working for myself, and it's beautiful. And it's an incredible journey. And I build a program that is licensed for 246 children, and then 345. That's right. And we become accredited in less than 18 months. Accreditation is hard, thank you. It is hard, and it was worth it, but we built it into the culture, and I think that's why it happened. And then all this started happening. 2008 happened too. Anybody around for 2008
Yeah.
that was active? Like, were you working and paying bills? Not like you were still in preschool. No. You remember, even if you were young and still in school, you probably remember how it impacted your family. Well, it impacted our business, but not as dramatically as others. So, 2008, the economy stuff is happening. Now I can get back to this part. So there was a lot of pressure to make sure we maintain enrollment, right? The owners had a lens of return on investment, which is their right to do, right? It was their money that built the business. But they don't have anything to do that they did. No one even actually knows their owners in our town, because I was the face of the program. Everyone in my town thought I owned the program. I would say I didn't own it, but I was everywhere, right? I'm carrying around blueprints. Who does that? Like, who's like, hey, I'm not getting a paycheck yet because the building's not actually broke ground, but look what. I did interviews in the library. I did tours in the library. I'm like, well, come to our local library and I'll tell you about these beautiful blueprints. So I don't have a building for you to tour yet, but you really want to give me your money and register. Right? I was on fire. It was an amazing experience. But on this day, on April 16th, 3 days after I buried my mom, one of the owners sits me down and she says, you need, can I swear? Are you okay? She says, you need to get your shit together. You've cried in front of parents. We're going to place you on a 2-week administrative leave. You need to grieve, get over it, be back here and make us some money. That was what my dad said, right? And I was like, okay, this has been my journey since May of 2008. Not having a job isn't really negotiable. And she said, and by the way, don't leave any of your personal stuff in the office because someone else will be in here while you're gone. By the way, it wasn't my program director, second in charge either. They promoted someone who was below her for 2 weeks for her to report to. And so I'm like, okay, I can be bitter and angry. I can brew and stew and call all my friends. Maybe I can even post something passive-aggressively on Facebook. Snapchat didn't exist then. I could have got real with that. Because no one else sees that. That doesn't exist after it happens, just so you all know. I decide I'm going to take the last $2,500 I have in my savings account and I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to grieve so my children don't see me fall apart. Right? Because I'm an oldest child. So I took care of everybody during that time. And this is on Friday. On Monday, I think all-inclusive resort, right? Then I can make sure I don't spend too much money. Y'all know what else they all include at a resort like that, right? Grieve? Bad idea. I feel like that is not going to help me. So I decide I'm going to do one of those moments where you put something in a Google search and you don't know what's going to come up. So I'm like, I need to go on a soul retreat. So I get this number and it comes up, Sedona Soul Adventures. Yes! And I call and they're like, well, we're going to hook you up with your angel guide. This just got a little existential for me. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with it. For me, I'm very faith-based and I feel like I'm guided where I'm supposed to be. So I continue to talk and it turns out I decide, you know what? I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow. I mentioned about the impulsivity thing, right? So I take that $2,500, I get on an airplane, I go to Sedona, Arizona for 3 days to grieve. And I meet with these practitioners in this group. It is the most existential thing I've ever done. The very last practitioner that I meet with is an iridologist. And the long story short is she says something about my health that makes me decide I need to go to the doctor. The girl doctor, that one. And in May of 2010, I'm diagnosed. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen, right? Except here's the interesting thing. Had I not been placed on administrative leave, had I not gone to Sedona, who goes to the doctor the month after your mom dies? You like get up and get dressed, and that's a win. You put some food in your mouth, and that's a win. But you don't go to the doctor for preventative exams. But I did because of all those other things, and it probably saved my life. Because I had surgery, and I was cancer-free. And that's, like, I watched what chemo and radiation did to my mom, I watched what it did to my friends, and I knew that that was a God sighting in my life. That was a moment. So, in February of 2011, I skipped the part where I'm home from the hospital one day. Remember, I've got all this pressure to build enrollment, right? So we find out, actually, my program director, and now business partner, finds out that one of the local Montessori's is closing. And she calls me, she said, you're not going to believe it. Been in our town for 17 years. They're closing. I said, come pick me up. She said, I'm not come picking you up. You are not even supposed to be out of bed. I said, if you don't come pick me up, I got keys to my car. I will go myself. She comes and picks me up, I go over there, I talk to the owner, I said, what do I need to do to help your family's transition to my program? Whoa. To my program. So she says, I want a job, and she taught Montessori, I'm a deep believer in high school. I've always been a high school girl, always, like back when the 90s. So, but the owners jump on board. They think this is an answer. And for the next year, they quietly, secretly meet with her to take over my job. Everybody knows it's happening. Phone calls are being made to my leadership team, the leadership team I developed. And there's really nothing I can do about it but stand in my truth and be who I am. I was asked to do things I refused to do, right? I was asked to compromise quality in ways I just wouldn't do it. And saying no is scary when you're a single parent. And by the way, remember, how many dollars do I have in my savings account? Yeah, and it wasn't growing because they cut my pay too, and half my benefits. So on February 11th, I'm asked to come to the attorney's office. If someone calls you up and say, please meet me at the attorney office, you're getting fired. Okay, you don't need to wonder what it's about. You are getting fired. The worst part was she brought this woman who I gave a job to, who ended her own business, in the room with us when she did it. Well, actually, the attorney did it. And then they got up and left. Well, she wanted me to give her the keys, and I'm like, I'm not moving. I'm sitting right here just like this, because if I move, I'm going to cry. This was everything I had poured my life into, right? Dinners I missed with my kids, going to work at 5 a.m., working on the weekends. I know you know what I'm talking about. It's great sacrifice to do things greatly. So I'm pretty devastated, didn't see it coming. I mean, saw it coming, but like there's a difference between see it coming and it really happens. So that part's hard. And there was a lot of this. And I don't mean like this baby looks cute. I'm talking ugly cry. You know the kind where you're like hives on your face, nothing can fix it. Your girlfriends are like, girl, you look like crap. You need to put a baseball hat on that if you need to go to the grocery store. I really wish Shipped existed back then. I wouldn't have had to see anyone in my community, because guess what? Remember I said I lived in a small community. There was no place to go that was safe, that I didn't have to face what was being said about me. Because people didn't know. The people my children went to school with, they knew me as the director of the biggest preschool early childhood program in the town. Now they knew me as the person who got fired. And by the way, there were rumors released that I was fired because I had wrongdoing. Like embezzled money, you name it. And I could say nothing, because standing in my truth meant knowing that if I just continued on the path of who I was and trusted, that the truth would be known. A lot of shame though. Grief is real when you lose a job. And it's really hard when people come to you and tell you all the things that are falling apart in the business you built, and you can do nothing about it. And you don't get to bash, right? You don't get to go into the deep and like feel, better because you be like, like that girl who stole your boyfriend, and then, something bad happens to her, and you're like, I'm not going to think bad thoughts. We can't be those people if we're standing in our truth. But here's the thing that really catapulted my life. This is my business partner. She's sitting right here. She was 6 months pregnant. And one day after they fired me, they told her, choose your loyalties. Now, Amy will tell you her first job was at the dollar store, but I tell you I gave her first job. She was 17 and had just graduated from high school, and I hired her as an assistant preschool teacher. She went to Western, she'd come back. She's like the dream college student. She'd come, she's like, here's my schedule for the year and the days that I'm available to work. I just, like, okay, Rhonda, Amy, okay? And she continued to work with me in my home daycare when she wasn't teaching first grade or preschool. And when I came to this program, I said, just concede, come to work for me full-time, be my M.Ed teacher. We would go with chalk at night after the contractors left and chalk up well, let's see, because you can't really judge when there's no walls, like how big a table is going to be. So we would chalk out all the equipment so we bought the right equipment. There are better ways to do that. But we were so excited. And she stood by me loyally for 8 years and built that business, never asking for anything more than a good job. And they said to her, choose your loyalties. She's 6 months pregnant. And she said, can I have the weekend? And they said, sure. And she came back and she said, I'd like to continue on and this is what I'd like to do. I said, you know what, we changed our mind. They had already changed all the locks. They had already changed the lock to her office, changed her computer password. They weren't thinking about the fact they didn't have any passwords to pay bills or payroll. So they eventually did have to call her back and say, sorry, like, could you give us those passwords? Which, by the way, she stood in her truth and she graciously did for all of the employees we cared about. A week before I was fired, we submitted our reaccreditation paperwork. And they got reaccredited with our paperwork. And Amy stood in her truth with one of the owners and she said, you told us when we increased enrollment that you would start giving back to the employees. How about just a $5 gift card? They know there are more students. Can we just show them that we're gonna stand in our truth, that we're gonna honor our word and just give them something? I won't repeat what was said in response, but it was intense and there was the spit talking. You know, where you're like, whoa, you're really angry. But she stood in her truth and advocated for our employees. So now I'm picking up extra teaching jobs, college teaching. I'm like, how do I scramble? Maybe I can, deliver pizzas. Whatever I got to do to pay the mortgage payment. But you just fired my person, and you did it because she was loyal to me. Now I feel responsible because she is voraciously loyal. And she makes me braver. Because when you have somebody standing behind you that isn't just slightly crazy, but is okay with telling you you're crazy is okay up to a point, but then they'll tell you no, she always shows up. Always. Even to horrible baby showers that last forever and you have to watch people open presents that you bought them and you already know what they are. And she shows up on time. She shows up for the big and the little, the hard and the easy. She tolerates my crazy. You have no idea. She is my person. Anybody in here a Grey's Anatomy watcher? Okay. You know, right? Christina? Meredith? Maybe not the dancing in the underwear. Kind of weird. But she is my person. Huh?
Are you saying I did something?
No, that's me.
Now it's all there.
She's my person and she shows up for me all the time. And that seems like, it doesn't seem like a horrible thing, but it is a hard thing. Because I'm a risk taker. And so I decide I'm not just responsible for me, I'm responsible for her too. Because that's what you do when you're raised to be loyal. And so I call her up and I say, we're going to open our own center. She's like, we don't have any money. Always the person of logic. But giving up on your goal because of one setback is like slashing your 3 other tires because you got a flat. I wasn't going to be deterred. We had built something incredible. In 8 years, we had built something legendary. And it was devastating to have to start over. And clearly, technically, if I'm being honest, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So I'm thinking, how many years do I have and what do I need to do? And so it begins. In May of 2011, we sign a lease, no money, to an empty building that is not to our level of what we want. So August 22nd, we opened. Has anybody ever signed a lease and opened a new building? Got licensed, equipped? May to August. And we did like, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000 worth of renovations with no money. But it turns out that child labor laws don't apply to entrepreneurship. So, my 7-year-old stepdaughter is up there shoveling wood chips. My son is painting. Our husbands are cutting down trees. I even enlisted my son's girlfriend. Not his girlfriend anymore, though. But it was back then. And my daughter. They're painting frames for the teacher's picture. Like, it was a family affair. Amy's dad is retired. I think he spent at least 2 weeks painting. What a saint. But apparently, her mom was thanking us. 2 weeks he was gone. She always offers him up for projects. So, things are going pretty well. I mean, besides the legal threats. I probably should mention this. The building we leased, any guesses? It was a Montessori one. It was empty, and it was half a mile down the street from the program we left. Like you could wave when you drive by. If you need me, I'll be down here. But mind you, there are some legal ramifications there, right? If you know the world of legal, I wasn't bound by a non-compete clause, and I didn't sign anything for a severance package. So I was free. I had a lot of moments when I wasn't a smart businesswoman early on. I got smarter, right? I didn't sign my name to anything I wasn't willing to commit to. So it allowed us to do that. Well, in October 15th of 2013, I went to Zumba. Yeah, right, because I was getting exercise then. And my Zumba instructor, how's it going? How's the business? Because people, we had been doing this for a couple of years, and people were starting to see that I was still the person I had always been. She says, hey, my friend's closing her program. She's selling her chairs. Great. So I go to the building to buy some chairs. Just some chairs. And I walk in the building, and I'm walking around, and talking around, and I get to the front of the building, and it was built in like 1856, and it has these great big windows. I'm like, was this you? Did you have this as your infant room? She said, we never had babies. I'm like, oh my gosh, this needs to be an infant room. It's beautiful, I love it, I love this building. It has such good energy, God is putting it on my heart. We're supposed to do, can you excuse me for a second? I walk to the back of the building, and I get Amy. Amy? Yeah? I want to buy more than the chairs. So she thinks like the owner built some crazy loft and I think it's awesome and I want to put it in a classroom, right? She goes, okay. I said, I want to buy the whole building. Amy. She says, we don't have any.
Mommy.
And we didn't because you know what? For the first year, we didn't take a salary. Because we knew the money we used to open the building was our parents. Nobody wants to do that, by the way, when you're 42 years old. Like, hey, Dad, Mom died and that insurance money, could I borrow some of it? That was a vulnerable moment for me. So we wanted to make sure we paid our parents back right away. So I worked 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other jobs, including directing the center. And thankfully, Amy was married. We really should thank your husband for that. Big Tuesday. So, we sign a purchase agreement, and I say, look, what's the worst thing that can happen? They'll say no. They're like, you girls are broke like a joke. This ain't happening. Right? Turns out if you're persistent, you might get 1 or 2 or 3 no's. But if you keep asking, eventually you'll get a yes. And so we finally signed a purchase agreement. In a rare moment, I'm on vacation. They got that cool DocuSign thing now, so you can do it remotely. I sign it, I tell Amy, I text her, I'm like, it's done. She signs it. She says, do you know what today is? What's today? I said. Mind you, I have remembered this day the last couple times. She says, this is the day you got fired. So, ironically, on my 3-year anniversary of being fired, by the way, I worked at Taco Bell at 16 and never got written up. Never been written up for anything in my life, but I gotta say I got fired. September of 2014, Heartfelt Impressions #2 officially opens. This is it. You see anybody you know in there? So that demolished looking thing, that's kind of what it looked like when we started the construction in May, and we opened license in August. So this was our grand opening day. Those are my beautiful tribe of people. And how poetic that my friend Brian White would be there. He's the one that the awards were given to in honor of, somebody who was a champion for standing in his truth. Being around him made you want to stand in your truth. And I feel so lucky to have had those opportunities. But this is when it gets really funny. Because at the grand opening, a man who owned a center in the town next door to us came over and he said, by the way, I want to sell my center to you. Amy goes, don't even. No, for real. What's the worst thing that could happen? They say no. So the short story is, I want to go to this conference. And so I say to the owner, hey, I know you have tickets. I don't have the money to go to this conference. I know you're not doing training with your staff. I'll barter for you. I'll train for 9 months for your staff if you'll pay all my expenses to go to this conference. Again, that's at work in my life. He says, sure, why not? Then I don't have to do it. Cool. But what he doesn't know is what I'm doing is investigating his culture and see, is this a culture fit for us? Can we do this? I'm going to start spending time with these employees and see what it's like on the inside. I go to the conference, I connect, I decide the people at this conference really speak my language. So after 9 months of training for him, we decide, yeah, we'll sign a purchase agreement. What's the worst thing that could happen? That's like 2015. We go back and forth for 2 years. But in the meantime, Amy and I start going to this mastermind group. These are our people across the country. These are the people who challenged us through this time. So much so, when we were ready to throw in the towel on this last deal, our friend Pete, we took a break from our meeting and he slid us each a piece of paper. Do you remember in elementary school? Well, okay, some of you remember this in elementary school. No one text messaged you a question. They slid you a piece of paper. Will you be my girlfriend, yes or no? He slid us both a piece of paper and it says, are you going to buy this place, yes or no? And we said, don't look at each other. I said no. She said yes. I was like, the universe is on its way. But what he did was he called us out to stand in our truth. We were either going to make a commitment to this or not. So, what happens next? We begin running a company we don't even own yet. This seems like a really good idea. In January of 2017, on the 2nd of January, we close and we now own 3 centers. Well, in 2017, we had grown so much, office space, nobody puts office space in an early childhood program because kids can be in that room, so why would you put office space? But we've kind of hit the tipping point. Our directors don't want us to sit on their laps. And we decide, I come to this conference and my tribe is here, my people. And I said, I don't know how we're going to get this office space that we wanted that was twice what we wanted to pay, but we have to be good stewards of our money. And Kathy comes up to me, when are you going to start working and coaching and training with me? Chris comes up to me, I need more time with you. When we're together, I get things done and it happens, and this just keeps happening. And I'm like, oh. Amy, I have an idea. Are you catching the theme? So I said, we're going to start a mastermind group. We're going to bring other like-minded individuals because standing in my truth, even when I have 0 time in my life, I hate the phrase you have too much on your plate. Because guess what? I put it there. If it's on my plate, it's because I want it there. Stop telling me that it shouldn't be on my plate. Because what you're telling me is I'm not good enough. And I am good enough. And I don't want that message anymore. And I decided, you know what? We're going to bring this group together, and we're going to spend time together, and we're going to lift each other up, and we're going to hold each other accountable. Standing in your truth is hard. It's easy to stand in your truth now. It's easy for me to tell this story now. Sort of not easy. I kind of want to throw up this morning. Because being vulnerable is not my best trait. But I know in this room are so many people just like me who've stood in your truth. Maybe your truth is self-reporting. I had that moment. 28 years. If I'm standing in my truth and I'm being honest with you right now, one time Amy and I were at a conference with a bunch of people and they were talking a really good game, so we decided to look at all their licensing reports. Not my finest moment. Because I was like, I can't believe that happened. Wow. Right? Self-righteous table for two. And then it happened to us. Circumstances beyond our control. Thankfully, not something horrible and nothing bad happened, and no one would have known. But we stood in our truth. We stood for what we told our teachers and everyone in our company we stood for, and we self-reported. And then the same stupid thing happened again. Complete different set of circumstances, but clearly a vulnerability. And you know what we did? We self-reported again. And for the first time in my career, in 28 years, I had a center that was on a provisional license. And I sobbed, and I was ashamed, and I wanted no one to know. Because who stands at a conference like this in front of your professional peers and says, I am a woman of quality. I am smart and capable. And I have one of my centers on a provisional license. But I know if I didn't tell you that today, you might not know. Get up, stay true, keep going. It is not about the shame. It's about standing in your truth and facing it. Because it was hard. It was out of my control. I wasn't the one who did it, and it was hard. And I said to our team, I said, we will learn from this. We will build trainings to make sure it didn't happen, and then we're going to share it with others. Because it turns out when I did some research, we weren't the only one making that mistake. Y'all have some issues with your playground? Yeah. And like 3-year-olds who are like, hey, you did your name to face? I'll be right back. You go hide behind this tree. Right? That happened. Guess what? Longest 6 months of my life, but we had a perfect licensing visit. And we are not on a provisional anymore. And I am very proud of that. That doesn't mean that this might not happen again, that something bad might not happen, and it terrifies me. It makes me want to say, can't I just go talk to people about being good? It seems so much easier than having to show up every day and do it. But we did it. And no martyrs allowed. Here's the thing about our field. Everybody wants to say what's not working. It's not enough money. It's not enough benefits. It's not enough college classes. You know what I think? You are called to do this. You're sitting in this room because it is your gift. Own it. Don't let anybody take it from you, and stay in it. The hard parts of it, when it gets hard, there is nothing in life. I bet if you went home and you asked your parents or your grandparents, was there ever a time that you just thought it was too hard? My grandparents taught me that about marriage. I asked my grandma, what's the answer to marriage? She goes, oh, the first 10 years were amazing. I was like, that is not advice. So I said, I'm going to ask Grandma. Like, he was like, she's still my bride 62 years later. I'm like, I want some of that, right? My grandma says, the first 10 years were horrible. I was so angry. I was like, that's the worst advice anyone has ever given me in my life. But what it was about is persisting. It was about standing in your truth and honoring what you are and persisting. I'm not the only person in this room who has a story about standing in their truth. You know that you can tell your truth in just one sentence. And I challenge every single one of you to do that. So I left my cell phone. I'm out of minutes, but I promised I would remember to take one selfie to memorialize the fact that I achieved this goal. So, are you ready? Oh wow, you guys look super impressive. I feel like I need a panoramic picture. You can't do that. I'm just totally showing my age. All right. All right. So, I told a few people I would call them out, so they know. One of our mastermind clients, Erica, you probably didn't see her on the news. Her center was told to be an exposure center for the measles, and she knew it wasn't. And she faced some seriously scary moments, and she went on TV and she stood in her truth because her business was under siege from social media attacks. And she knew that it wasn't a case of measles, it was a reaction to the immunization. And she was terrified, but she did it anyway. And now the health department has agreed to retract the statement. But she could have stayed back and said, I'll just do whatever. But she knew that she had to stand firm in her truth. Maybe someone else might not have done that. My beautiful friend Chris right here, she's going to tell a story today in her session about standing in her truth. And it's been a walk, it's been a journey, but I tell you, it is a beautiful story. I respect her so much. My dear friend Betsy Spiker standing up here, a testament to her being at this conference and being fully present. You want to talk about a woman who stood in her truth the last 3 years? Right there. Right there. Surround yourself with people who want to stand in their truth. And I challenge you to post, to speak, to talk about your truth, and to share it because your truth matters. Thank you.